Hello, everyone. Um, well, first of all, I want to introduce myself with you formally. Um, my name is Pepe Pepe. That's how you guys probably heard my name in your mind, next to you, around you. Maybe someone told you about it. Maybe you never heard of my name before. Um, I've been I've been dealing with so many things as you are as well. And if I start mumbling or you notice that my speech is in a way being disrupted, I'm sure it happened to you, and that's because these entities, I'll call it spirit. I like to call it entity. To me, that's what they are. They have the lack of brain. They don't have a brain. They just have a little bit of memory. I call it short-term memory. My story began back in New York. I'm talking about roughly 6 years ago. I was living in an basement apartment back in New York. I lived in New York for a very long time, almost 15 years. I lived in the city, then I moved to different places. You know, if you're from New York, you know that one of the things that New Yorkers have to deal with, it's housing. So I went and lived in all the boroughs, 5 boroughs, well, except for State Island. I never lived there. But I lived in Brooklyn, I lived in Queens, Elmhurst, I lived in the Bronx, Pelham Bay Park, and I lived in the city in Manhattan. I also lived in New Jersey. That's where the story begins, as most of the movies that we watch in TV, they always start in New York, mostly. I was having a regularly normal life, if you could say that. I enjoyed my life living in the city. For me, it was a conquer experience, just because the magical environment that people live in the city, it's unique. You don't find that anywhere else. It's like you're living in a movie. Like you're living in a movie, and everywhere you look, everywhere you stop, everywhere you make a turn, there is something magical. And it happened to everyone, every New Yorker, every single person from around the world that moves to New York had the experience. So I moved to the Bronx because I was looking for to save us some money, and I was looking for a change. I found a place that was relatively affordable, that I could save some money, and I did save some money, and I did make some things that I wanted to experience. I lived there for a while. I got my apartment, and I didn't have any furniture. I just had a couch, and I have a mattress. I moved there because I wanted to get away from the city. The city can be a little bit of overwhelming if you don't really make wise choices as far as money and things that you have to take care. At the time when I was in my apartment in the Bronx, I remember I used to have this feeling of emptiness. I felt like I was missing out on something. And that feeling always got related with a thought. if I would think about things that I would do, friends, places, even music, that I would have that empty feeling like there was something missing. And I will just feel very uncomfortable, and I will feel different feelings. And that's when I start thinking, I can't be alone. I need to be around people. I need to do something. And I would just leave my apartment. I would just go to work, get back to my apartment, and I would just change my clothes. And as soon as I got that thought in my mind, that I would have that feeling, the feeling of emptiness, the feeling of missing out, the feeling that I need to be around people. And what I was doing for a year, it took me a year for me to get that feeling out of my system, my mind. So as soon as I felt that feeling, I would just rush into the city at any time, 2 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 a.m. And it was such a struggle for me because I just couldn't understand what was happening to me. So I decided for a year, I felt that way, and every time I felt, I would go back into the city, and I would go and see my friends and go to bar hops and try to have a social life. But it slowly things start changing, and not for the better, for the worse. I start having all of these other feelings that I didn't understand where they were coming from, and I felt like I wasn't good enough, even though I had a job and I have a relatively comfortable life. So the struggle started when I started trying to put my mind and my body and my feelings together, when I start analyzing. It was a time when I start analyzing things, and they're just other feelings that would just come into my mind. Feelings that I didn't understand why or how they came into my body, into my mind, and I just didn't pay much attention. There is a point of a feeling of a process that I was working for these Jewish people. I was managing their accounts for the online merchandise, and I was also doing other type of administrative duties. So I was working for them for about 3 years, and they are very united. So if I didn't have a job, if a company wasn't requiring me to be at their site, that I would go to another one. There were different places. And I went back to one of the stores that they have in 23rd Street, right where is the Ironstone building. And that's when I started analyzing more. I would just stare into space and analyze actions and thoughts, and analyze why I can't get out of these circle habits, behavior of thinking, why it's always like that. And for a very long time I struggled with it, into one day I was in the subway, and I just wanted to vent out. I wanted to just to scream out loud and scream and say that I couldn't understand what was happening. So I went and I got a book about this guy who was I can't remember the title of the book, but it was about this man who went through some struggle and he committed suicide. And to everyone's eyes, to the police, to society, that was just normal, right? He committed suicide. It's just he here goes my my speech disruption, because obviously these entities, they are close to me and they just try to set themselves into a position where they can be just to terrorize. Anyway, so I read this book, and it just I feel related to it. It just spoke to me in a way that I just couldn't understand what it was telling me. And I just have this urge to write, to say something, to get everything out. So I got a pen and I got a pencil, and I was just writing, and I started writing in the subway on my commute to work. I started writing, and I would get to my place and I would just sit down and write, and that's how everything started. I wrote a story about actions and about faith. All of these ideas just came into me, and I was just feel that I was being tapped into other source, because when I finished that story, when I finished many of the stories that I wrote, I just look at them, and my first thought was, did I wrote this? Did I write this? Did I do this? I feel like I was a different person when I look at it. And that's when I start feeling there was something awakened within myself. So every time I will get tapped, I will connect into this other source, which I just, at the time I couldn't explain. It was just, for me, it was inspiration. And it still is inspiration. And my stories, they just kind of unravel many of the things that they just came into me. I feel like back then, if I didn't have written those ideas, those stories, that I would never have been able to figure out many things that I was able to figure out later on. And it was because the ideas that I had, they just came into my mind, and if I didn't hold onto those ideas, then later on I will forget about them. But what happened is that I will go back and read those stories, and those stories will tell me exactly what was happening in my surroundings. Those stories were telling me what was happening in my brain, what was happening around me, what was happening to my self-being, what was happening everywhere. And I just kind of start seeing these illusions in my mind where things were connecting, like if there were lines that were connecting to one and another. And I just start feeling like, all right, this is a little bit of a crazy. Why am I looking at all these dots connecting to each other? And that's how everything started. Everything started with words, with stories, and with thoughts. And I feel that's what it got me into this tornado, into this to the center of the tornado. Because after I wrote that story, and after I published it and it went online, and I was on the internet, then everything started happening. It's like I was being tracked after that, because of the words and the thoughts that I was putting out there. And ever since then, things started happening to me. Slowly, I kept writing. I went and took some classes for creative writing. I really got into the writing part, and I feel that was a hidden talent that I didn't have. I started having a lot of questions regarding my trajectory, why I came to this earth. I started asking about where we coming from, why is it that I look at the sky and I stare at the sky and I feel something. And I felt as if I was looking out or reaching out for something. And I'm sorry that I get emotional. I'm not getting emotional. It's just these entities, they try to make me feel weak. I'm not weak. I have understand a lot of things that I couldn't understand before. And then I started paying attention to things like, if I look to a certain place, why do I look there? Is there something there? And my eyes couldn't see nothing there. There is like, it was just like things, weird things that start happening. And through my trajectory of a writer, I became a writer. I became a reader first, and then I became a writer, and I read a lot of things about books, about economy. I read about poetry, and everything that inspired me to read or to write was for a reason. At the time, I thought it was just because I wanted to know about those things, but it was never like that. There was a reason for everything that I did, that will lead me into where I am right now, so far from what I started. At the time, I have a good friend that was in a need of a place, and that's when things start getting really, really crazy, because my friend, as many others, have gone through paths where we don't understand what we have or how we start having habits. The habit of going out every week, the habit of being triggered by things that we don't really understand, the habit of being healthy towards being self-destructive. All the time I had a friend that was reaching out for me for help. He was in a different state and he wanted to move to New York State. Back then things were happening to me, but I wasn't really struggle with the answers, it was just not that overwhelmed yet. So I got a call. He told me that he wanted, if I had a place for him to stay, and I told him that I have a place that he could just crash with me for a while until he can be able to manage and to get back his life, or to get back on his feet. And he said that he wanted to take a flight, that he was just waiting for me to say the yes, and I told him, yes, you can come and stay with me. And I went and picked him up for the airport. At the time, he was diagnosed with bipolar disease. So far, what I have from his story was that after we started seeing each other, he went into this roller coaster where he was drinking a lot and he was taking a lot of pills. I don't really know the story. I just know that he wasn't well mentally. So you hear things from people that they tell you they're bipolar people, and all the things. I didn't really care. I feel that if somebody wants to make it right and somebody wants to get back on their feet, then why not? There's an opportunity for everybody. I never deal with someone with bipolar disease, so I just didn't think of it. To me, he was my friend, and he's still my dear friend, and I love him very much. So he moved in with me. I'm gonna stop the story here because I had to move. I had to go back home, but I will continue. I will pick where I left off, which will be from here, because that's how it's. I'm gonna tell the story, and I'm gonna tell the story how it is. Thank you, and I'll see you soon.